Yeah, I think we're good to go. I'm now live on the channel. There we go. Okay, the stream is up. Apparently, the stream did not go live when it was supposed to. Hello, people in chat. I see you. Merry day after streaming. Yeah, okay. I think we're good. I think everything kind of caught back up. We are back. It is the literal Monday after next conference. We have a lot to talk about. We saw a lot of cool stuff. I was there in person, which made it even cooler. So yeah, let's talk about what happened, what I think is possibly what's going to be happening in the future, and then of course, like anything in between. You may notice that my lights are missing. It's fine. We'll figure it all out in the end. But we're here. Good to be. Apparently my bitrate is complete trash. That's weird. Let me just double check here. Nope, my audio should be good. If it is not good, please let me know. I can hear myself through monitoring. Are we just trashing this whole stream? Hold on 1 second. Let's see if I can hear myself now. If you cannot hear me on YouTube, please let me know. It's hard to tell. I should be able to hear me, but... Yeah, okay, I can hear you. All right, great. I think everything is working. Okay, we are incredibly rusty. And, yeah, things be happening, everybody. Things be happening. I haven't used this machine since we left for next conference, so not 100% sure if everything is good, but let me just check Twitch as well to make sure that I'm not crazy and everything is not falling apart on my channel. Oh, well, the name is wrong for a start. That's good streamer. I'm a good streamer. Let me just update the title. You can tell that I clearly was organized here. Let's see. Edit stream information. Next.js conference. Roundup. Copy. Paste. And done. Cool. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, we're good. I'm glad the person that's in the Twitch chat says that, YouTube chat says that you can hear me. I think we're good to go. All right, now let's actually get to this. Okay, so if you're unaware, I went to Twitch. I went to Next.js conference on last week, and we saw everything that happened on Tuesday. We got to see some cool stuff behind the scenes. We didn't see any of the cool, like the actual CFPs that people produced out, but there were a lot of big changes there, and I think it's time to talk about it now that I've had time to think about what was happening and also what's coming up, things like Turbopack. We talk about Next.js fonts. We can talk about SplitB acquisition. We can talk about layout, server components, async, awaiting, streaming, and whatever else is there. It was an interesting overall conference, and I think we should start with the easy stuff. So let's go in with things like NextLink. If you're unaware, NextLink has finally fixed one of the biggest annoyances ever, which I honestly thought was dumb from the beginning. But let me just find an example. So if I press this button, this should show you my screen, and hopefully we'll be good. Yeah, so before you kind of had this annoying feature, Next 12, or before, once it arrived, was that you kind of had this, you had to basically nest anything that was an A into your next link, which was super annoying because it caused all sorts of issues when you're trying to render things in a specific way. So in Next 13, they basically got rid of it and just said, hey, just give us the href and we'll do the rest, which is perfect because one, it was annoying, and two, now we don't have to worry about it anymore. You can just do whatever you wanted to. This was actually one of the... It wasn't surprising because it was already in 12.2, but it was nice to actually see that this is now in fruition and it's now been done, and we can now kind of move on to enjoying Next Link in the way it should have been since the beginning of time, which is literally just wrap whatever I want in a link. On top of that, they also fix a super important thing, which is fonts. Fonts originally were super pain in the butt. You basically had to do a way to basically import your fonts in a way that made sense. So you'd either do it in the document or you do it on the exact page where you want the fonts. Then you could kind of occasionally get layout shifts. That's all gone away now. You can use this at Next/font. And of course, they've partnered with Google. So, there's basically two forks, which is React and then the Chrome team. They worked with the Chrome team for this. It's super cool. So now you can do things like this, where you import Next font from Google, let's say the Inter framework, and then you can just give it the class name. What's amazing about this is there's no request sent to the browser. So even if you want the really cool, fascinating fonts, you no longer have to worry about, I'm sending this to the browser. This sucks. It takes too long. There's layout shifts, or you get the pop-ins, right? Where you see one font, then you see another one. All of that will go away with this font. And you can also do your own custom fonts. So if you own a font for a business, you can now use this to essentially give you 0 client-side browser requests for your fonts. So that was super cool. Those were real basic things. Next image kind of got an upgrade, which I'm not 100% sure if what you can call is essentially an improvement, but basically now the alt is now required field, and it should have been a required field when they introduced images. But now we have it, so who cares? Something I'm super excited about. And now they have the actual image component with Next 13, allows you to ship less JavaScript, etc., etc. Basically, the whole theme in Next 13 is that you ship less JavaScript, which has kind of been a common theme if you look at the way meta frameworks are going, such as Astro, where we're just shipping tiny islands of content. Next.js is getting on this train. And there's a couple of things behind this too, right? Like, Next image originally was built to allow you to do some dynamic stuff and really speed up the process of having images. And now with this, you get to do more of this, and lazy loading doesn't require hydration, which was like a weird thing that used to happen. So I'm excited that this has kind of happened. And those were like the tiny changes. Those were like the really unimportant ones. In the state of like the whole thing, if you look at what was happening in general, these were the small tiny changes. In fact, I think they only really announced, no, I don't want to talk about Turbopack. I think they only really announced Next font as a feature, and then these other pieces as just some upgrades. Like if we go into this, into the old... This is the old documentation now because they have a beta version, but basically it was a very short change. This is kind of neat where now they're automatically determining the width and height. So before you always had to like give them something. But with remote images, you still have to give the width and height. But overall, it's just a very short and small change. I was kind of excited about it. That's because I nerd out on things that like matter. From a standpoint of like day-to-day Next.js usage, right? So I use Next.js every single day, like thousands of times a day. I use it in some variation. So having these small quality of life changes were super important to me and others in the community that have been around for a while. Vercel OG was something else. They really didn't talk about it at the conference, so I wouldn't worry too much if you don't know what this is. But essentially, it's a way to give you OG images via an API, essentially, and you basically can do something like this, and that's what will get returned as an OG image. So if you've got blog posts, you can essentially do this, and then make this your, I don't know, the title. And now you don't have to make 400,000 images every single time, which to me is a 10 out of 10. So those were the really weird, like really small things that nobody really, there weren't that many cheers in the room. Let's just put it that way. Then they didn't even, so the weird thing is they didn't really talk about middleware per se, which is kind of strange to me. I feel like you should probably talk about middleware in some nature. But basically now you have this, if you set it to 13, essentially you can now set request headers in the rewrites, which wasn't available before, which helps things like authentication or authorization. You can now do headers to make it really, really easy to sort of do exactly this. You can say, this is my API function, right? This is the path for my functions. And then anything that's in here, go ahead and say, is it authenticated with this request? And then this could be clerk, for example. You'd pass in like, if there's a user ID with a request, return auth is good, otherwise failed, and that's it. Super cool. Really appreciated the fact that this is now a feature that basically we at Clerk in general have been waiting for. So being able to see that now has been super awesome. We kind of wanted this for some other stuff, and now we know for sure that it is a feature. So those are like the small changes. One big change that was really like under the radar announced was Split B, Vercel being acquired so that it can give you first-party analytics. Now, this is a bit weird to me. So if you don't know who Split B was, it was basically a way to do analytics similar to Plausible or Phantom Analytics, basically giving you awesome analytics everywhere, but being like, GPDR and all that stuff, so that you don't have to worry about third party, you don't have to worry about cookies, super lightweight, blah, blah, blah. So now that's integrated into the Vercel dashboard, so you can like have this, allowing you to see what the audience is doing throughout your application. In my opinion, it goes to show, I think I tweeted about this probably. I probably wrote an amazing tweet that said something like, because I'm a funny guy, I think I wrote something like, Vercel is like a somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Here's the tweet. Vercel is like a startup office. Everything is here, so you don't want to leave. Like, that's the whole idea, right? Like, basically, Vercel wants you to just use Next.js and then just use their platform for everything. And then if you're not using Next.js, just use our platform anyway. Like, that's what we want. And so, yeah, I think it was a brave move on their part to pick Split B. But also, I think the acquisition will help them sort of expand their analytics project, which is underutilized and mainly focused on like first paint scores, etc., which is helpful, but not helpful enough to warrant the whatever it was, $5 I think it was after the first free one. So yeah, so that was an interesting piece to this. I promise we'll get into like this big server components thing that's like big. But I really want to talk about is Turbopack, because TurboPack is essentially Webpack 2.0, I guess is the good way to describe it. Yeah, it was basically a way to get rid of Webpack. Like, Webpack's cool, but we want to do some new stuff. So they basically took the creator of Webpack and said, hey, we want the next Webpack. Let's make it. Let's call it Turbopack. And it's supposed to be... Now, obviously, take these with a grain of salt, because this is actually marketing bollocks and nobody believes that this is actually true. They reckon that on cold boot, it is 700 times faster. But nobody actually believes that's true. If you've ever lived in the marketing world, or you've lived in like our world in general, you know these numbers are hyperinflated. This was probably like, I want to say, I don't know, probably like 2 of 10,000 runs gave us this score, and now we can claim that that is, that the boot takes this long. Vite, for example, on ES build, yeah, it's 11 seconds maybe. If you've got 3,000 modules, and then it's supposed to like X more as you import more modules. But first of all, like, I don't know how true this is, but we'll see, because right now it's in alpha and it's like got a bunch of shit that doesn't work. For example, here gives you like the idea of how it works. Take this file, you bundle this file, you read this file, you bundle this file, and you concatenate it together, blah, 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 blah. Once it's done it once, it never does it again. That's the whole idea. But there's things like CSS here. You basically have to run this runaround just for Tailwind. So you have to do next dev turbo and then Tailwind CSS input CSS output CSS -- watch, and then the same when you build it. So like, it's not out of the box ready, and so it's so new that I can't imagine these are gonna stay around. Not this workaround, but like, I can't imagine these figures in wherever it was. I can't imagine this 700X is going to stay around. And if Vite just moves to the same architecture, this number becomes irrelevant. They're not on the same architecture. Vite decided not to do it. Like, if they go back and make that decision themselves, it will probably be like 1x faster. But what I'm excited about is this. So at some point in the future, you'll be able to share Turbo Cache across your entire team using the remote caching, allowing you to go faster than before and not have to worry so much about what's going to happen. And then that kind of thing will probably end up speeding up development in general, versus this like hyperinflated marketing material that we know is inflated in general. So this kind of stuff, which they should have probably done more. Like, they probably should have talked about remote caching more and more, with Turbopack in mind. Not what current remote caching is today, but what it will be in the future. Yeah, I just think it's one of those things that like people are missing out on. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Somebody just followed me somewhere, and I don't know what event that came out of. It may have been YouTube. It was indeed YouTube. Thank you for the YouTube sub. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I don't know what is good and what is bad right now. Like, these benchmarks obviously are... I would like to see how they came up with these. I don't think they have the data anywhere. Like, I think they just have this, and like, that tells you the times, but they don't actually have any evidence of why or how it worked. So I'll be intrigued to see a real world scenario when it happens. Because, like, yeah, a sub 1 second cold boot start is really, really good. But then, like, telling me it's going to take 20 seconds and Vite takes 109 right today. Like, these numbers are just hyperinflated and they don't make any sense. Like, same with this. Like, I'd be really intrigued to see like the 99 percentiles here of what those numbers are actually looked at, which maybe I can ask somebody for them. But yeah, like, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be good. I think migrating from Webpack is kind of sketch right now, and I wouldn't do it today, obviously, because it's not production ready. I think they actually say that when you go here. Yeah. Turbopack's currently in alpha. It's not production ready. And I 100% think that probably between now and like, I don't know, the end of the year, you'll see more push for Turbopack. And I'm excited for it. There's some stuff that, like, basically, they're still using SWC to compile JavaScript. So, like, things that you do today are still going to work today, but just don't, like, expect if you go in production that there isn't going to be big changes between now and Christmas. Yeah. And basically, like everybody else in the world, they focused on React first, and they'll come back and fix Svelte and Vue.js in the future. Right. Turbopack, done. We've talked about remote caching and why they should have used that as a feature set instead of just putting these silly numbers on screen that mean nothing. That's Turbopack. That's Turbopack. That was image optimization. What else? I don't really want to talk about that yet. Middleware is done. Bunch of breaking changes. I think we may be at the point now where we could talk about Next 13. But before we do anything else, let's talk about some of the cool stuff that, like, were in the keynote and stuff like that. Like, I think... whose keynote is this? Oh yeah, that was us in the crowd, probably. Just Oh yeah, and can we talk about this? This is funny. Hey Lee, it's you, Lee. This. Lots and lots of like Apple-esque reality here. Like, we really pushed, like, let's get these fancy animations on screen. Like this. Oh, that's not good. Let's just play it a bit. There. This is very Apple-esque. They really went hard with, like, we want to show you everything. And I have to admit, like, in person, it was really, really cool to see. It was really cool to see. Well, I don't care about that. Did they not show that beginning piece? There was like a preview before the keynote, I think, which talked about like a user of Next.js, and it was like the merch people that use for merch this year, which is like super fun, but apparently I don't see it anywhere. Anyway, oh gosh, you get to see all of my YouTube stuff. That's fun. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see all those kinds of things. I guess we can talk about the elephant in the room. I think if you just go to beta.nextjs.org. Yeah. Okay, new docs. That's a bonus. I always like some new documentation. Congratulations to the team on this. It was done really, really well. They're really nice, and it allows you to basically switch between the two of them. So if you want to use 13, just go to beta.nextjs.org/docs, and that will get you to where you want to be. Essentially, there's some discussion around how this RFC came to light and who did what, but don't worry about it. At the end of the day, like, the big beef is that, like, Vercel and React are working together, and, like, without them, they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing. But at the end of the day, like, who cares? At the end of the day, if Vercel helped React get to the finish line, we've been waiting for this for like 3 freaking years. And, like, without it, I would pretty much, bet that React server components would probably still be another 2 or 3 years away. And seeing people bitch on Twitter about, like, oh, it's all collusion, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, okay, get off your high horse. Like, everybody who wanted access to the RFC could have done their own RFC work. So, like, who cares? In my opinion, does it really matter? Yeah. So, talking about this in general, like, we're going to talk about things that I like. We're probably not going to do any. By the way, if you came here for Code Stream, it's the wrong stream for you. I got some stuff that, like, I feel like potentially it could be good. There are some scary things in here still. There's some things that they missed, like, big shout out to Theo for doing this video. Sorry, Theo, you're now featured on my stream as of right now. He did a video called... where did it go? Here it is. This weird, like, TypeScript thing that happened if you're using TypeScript, which we'll also talk about that in a second. Go watch this video. It basically tells you what, how, and why this happens. That's a big thing to talk about. So Next.js has decided to move towards TypeScript-first. And I have opinions about this that may not agree and align with everybody else. TypeScript-first is good, but also really bad. Now, hear me out. TypeScript has always been an opt-in, and I agree that TypeScript should be the way forward. If you are creating an application today, TypeScript is what it should be. And the reasons behind that is simple. Like, TypeScript plus knowledge of TypeScript, type safety, less bugs, more productive work, etc., etc. But with this comes great responsibility about teaching new people that are coming in how TypeScript works and how to use it safely. And I don't think we're going to get any of that. Like, unless educators like myself or Theo or CodeStack or Fireship or whoever it is in the same industry goes and teaches more TypeScript, or Matt Peacock or whoever, like, whoever ends up having to do the work, I just don't think it's going to be us, essentially. Like, I don't think Next.js is going to be like, hell yeah, you should learn TypeScript, and here's a really educational piece on TypeScript. There's going to be this huge assumption now that you know TypeScript, and that's why you're using Next.js. Of course, this is not, like, official, I don't think. Maybe. I guess I can find out. Let's see here. Terminal. CD development. This project name test app. I can't remember if it's, like, out of the box right now or if it will be in the future. It is clearly out of the box right now because it installed types. So yeah, when you do this right now, if you're using Next 13, you will see this out of the box today as a thing. Here's some types. everything's going to be TypeScript. Like, there is a lot here that you may not understand if you've never used TypeScript before. And it puts the onus on others to educate those users. And I feel like it's a step back. So here is the code. I just had to install it all first. Here is the code. Page TSX. Here is TypeScript. If you don't understand how types work, it could be kind of confusing. Do you know what this should be when you go out into your layouts? Do you know what this means? How do you debug these kinds of things? Like, TypeScript is like one up from where a lot of users are today. And like, no offense to those users out there. Like, I think you are doing well. Hey, Brian. Hey, I just saw your message. Sorry, it's been 8 minutes since you asked it. I watched a video from someone yesterday, and they mentioned a concern with this Turbopack is that the caching might be too tied to Vercel services. My thoughts on this. My thoughts are quite simple. It is it won't be. It may be currently, but it won't be in general. Wide adoption. So Vercel's whole thing is wide adoption, right? If you look at their NPM downloads, they're at like 5 million a week or some ridiculous number right now. So the idea here is it may be tied to Vercel services today, but it won't be that all the way. Like, being in alpha means they can tie it to their own and then release it out later, or like start to breathe. I don't think it'll be an issue. I haven't looked that much into it because it's such a like raw state right now. That like you can't even use it in production. So what's the point of me investigating? I could play around with it a bit more, but I don't think it'll be a huge concern. And like, Vercel are basically doing what they think is right, which is you don't need to leave Vercel to go and do something else. I don't want you to leave Vercel. If you have a project in Next.js, you should use Vercel. If you need analytics, use Vercel. If you need A/B testing, use Vercel. If you need this, basically that's the whole point. But I don't think it will be that bad. It's hard to tell right now. Like, I mean, tomorrow, they could announce that, hey, we're not going to put this on any platforms, but I don't think it'll be a big deal. They just basically want everyone to use their stuff, so that's how they do it. Hey, David, thanks for coming to the stream. I am well. I am a bit tired, but I'm well. Yeah. And the emphasis on Rust is kind of interesting. Like, there's this real push for Rust-based projects at Vercel in general, which is kind of an interesting take. But yeah, so big thing really is like TypeScript is the future. If you don't know TypeScript, now's the time to kind of learn it. I have concerns that people will struggle to grasp the concepts when they're trying to move towards Next.js if they haven't been there already. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things that like it could be. I don't know. I feel like TypeScript should still be opt-in. Maybe I feel that way because I have to teach all the time and it's hard to like teach people TypeScript. In like a beginner setting, it's very hard to teach TypeScript and also teach a new thing. Like, if I wanted to teach you about Next.js, having the thought and theory of like, I need to teach you Next.js and I also need to teach you types, that's kind of wild to me. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. One of my things that I think is pretty is cool and or scary is this new data fetching for like the new RFC essentially allowed them to do data fetching and get away from get static props, get server side props, and then like SWR and everything else. We're now in the space where essentially you can do all of your data fetching in components and then just like get the data. Which for me, who uses like server rendering a lot, like I lean heavily towards server rendering because I'm old school. And like when I was writing JavaScript, it was mostly, I mean, when I was writing Java before JavaScript, like everything was rendered on the server and it was delivered and it was weird. And now we're kind of going full circle again. We're back in the beginning. And the only way to differentiate is to do this essentially tell fetch how to handle what you want to do, which is the same as right now, but it has naming conventions that make sense, right? So if you're like, I need static, it's get static props. If I need something rendered from the server every single time, it's get server side props. If I want something that is fresh data every single time, and I don't care when the data gets loaded in, I use client side and I use something like Stellwire Validate, I use React Query, I use something like that, right? But now we're kind of going down this layer of like this is like the default, which essentially says like, hey, it's cached 100% of the time, all the time. Which is fine. Like, hey, I'm all for that. But like, there's also, it's just something that like, is scary if you've never really dealt with large changes before. Like, if we go here and we say data fetching here. Where did it go? Yeah, okay, so here we go. So this, right, is the equivalent of get static props as it was today. So here are all my nav items. And then basically you say, here is my layout, which is this is a server component. It's not on the client, so it's server side and then delivered, right? If I want these nav items, I just do this await get, and I get nav items from wherever they are, and then I map over them. This is the equivalent of get static props, which feels really strange when you've tried to, and I understand the reasoning. The reasoning is obvious. They tried to make it originally like you can have the best of all these worlds, but you have to use all these separate conventions each time. So yeah, you can do it on the server, use server-side props. You can do it on the client, use SWR or React Query. You can do it fully static by using get static props. Now what they're trying to do is they're trying to backtrack that in and say, hey, just just use this and this will be the equivalent of X, or just use no store and it will be server-side props. And then you can do parallel functions like this, and then you can do all your promises here. And it's a bit wild that we've gone this way. It feels like we're doing circles, and this feels like it's 2003. Maybe in the future it will make more sense, but it just feels like I've gone back in time and people are asking me to do some random stuff that like I feel like we could have just had in the first place. And then you're adding in things like streaming and suspense on top of that, which is like a whole new like essentially a whole way to wrap your React component while it's loading, like you'll just get like the fallback, which is like really nice from a UI UX perspective. Like being able to chunk in large pieces of data and show different scenarios. So like in this example here, which I think is a really shit example, essentially what you'll see here is this won't show up until all the data is available. So in the meantime, you'll get to see this, and I think this example isn't that great. But essentially allow you to show different things depending on what the data is loading, which is cool. We've been doing this for years, but without suspense. Like we've just been like with React Query or SWR, it's we have data, we have loading, we have error states, and depending on which one of those, you show a different UI depending on those. That's the same thing, except from now we're kind of like Next.jsing it a bit more. API routes is not available right now in this versioning. But yeah, like there's some stuff I'm super excited to like dig in. I think I'm gonna build a bunch of apps out of the box to try and see what I can and can't break. Oh yeah, we now have like soft navigation, or the term is soft navigation, where like depending on parameter changes, you can now soft navigate, which like allows you to prioritize things and move it quickly. But yeah, like that's basically my overview of like the changes per se. There were a lot more things I've probably forgotten since I was at Next.js conference. I'm excited for a couple of different things that are outside of like the realm of normality. Like my excitement is more about like, hey, by the way, like we finally fixed link after 1,000 years. Thanks for being so patient. Things like that have been fixed, which is super great. But overall, NextConf was clearly just a lot of like, hey, by the way, Next 13 is here, and we've basically done what we've like to do at Next and Vercel, which is like essentially just render everything you've done useless. Welcome to legacy code. Yes, you can adopt slowly, but like, what's the point? Just adopt and go for it, I think is probably, unless you've got a huge stack. And yeah, I want to see how things like TRPC plus, say, let's Next.js 13 or React Query and Next.js 13 work together. Like Clerk was lucky enough that we already have like Clerk done. Like if you want to use Next.js 13 and you want an auth provider, like we're here. Like it's here. We support the app directory. We support the pages directory. Yeah, we support all the things that you could possibly want out of the gate. So you don't have to like worry too much about like if you want to try this out and you want to try an auth provider, like just give us a shot. Essentially, like everything has been simplified. We've done some really good work here. I'm excited to use this and to play around with it more. But yeah, like we already built our beta. I think we're the only auth provider right now that's got full Next.js 13 support. Yeah, I think that's about it really. I've been chatting for like solid 45 minutes for the first time in a while. Yeah, anybody got any more questions? It doesn't have to be Next.js related. It could just be in general. Yeah, I think that's it, basically. I think we're done. It was a nice roundup, and it's only 4:15, which is great, which means I got 45 minutes to build more apps. Yeah. And I think that'll be the end of the stream for today. If you're watching this on YouTube, enjoy the VODs that I can now leave up. I don't have to worry about them so much. And everybody else who's watching on Twitch, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Makes my life a bit easier. Until the next one, see ya.